Howdy, y'all. Today we are getting into our first, kind of big project of the semester. For a lot of us, I recognize probably haven't drawn a whole ton of vehicles, um, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I've never been a huge, vehicle illustrator, but having taking the time to actually do a couple good vehicles, I've come to appreciate how to draw them, and I think they're really fun and engaging and difficult object that has its own character. With that being said, this project, as kind of the word illustration implies, is going to be a little less process heavy than some of our previous stuff. I'm going to provide us a foundation for how I want us to set up everything, and then, but there's going to be a lot of questions that you're going to have that I won't have answers to, right? It depends on your inking skill, how you want to depict the vehicle. I'm going to do a couple things in my own illustration that I don't fully recommend. Like I made the tires be connected to the big drop shadow on the bottom as just a big black space because I always find that awesome. But that's not a requirement. If anything, I recommend not doing it so you see more information. But this is there for people who have been annoyed at how handholdy previous projects have been. I think you're going to appreciate the breath of fresh air that this one gives. As there's a little bit of a good amount of variance for how everyone's work is probably going to look at the end of the day with this one. But with that being said, some of the things that we do need to follow is this, what I'm calling grounded perspective here. My vehicle, which I'll put up on the screen shortly, is a Ford Bronco from 1986. And I have a reference photo that I'm heavily referencing, but I'm not just looking at the photo and drawing it. I'm actually, as everyone will be, setting up our own vanishing points on the page. It's going to be one car per page of 11 by 17 to give us like a lot of room. But you're going to be setting up vanishing points and then using your images as references, constructing the car in your set perspective. And so it's not just like trying to copy an image, it's actually using just the image as a reference and constructing it in your perspective. So with your own vanishing points. And when it comes to vanishing points, there is a couple of options. On Canvas, under this assignment, there is a good example here from a previous teacher of a tractor and a Zamboni. And this is obviously, vanishing points are high up on the page. High vanishing points, we're looking down on the object. This is a great option, probably the one I recommend, right? Putting those vanishing points high. Another example here, which is with those vanishing points high on the page, so we can see, the top of the vehicle, which is awesome. But this is also, this video that's here, as well as what the demo that I'm actually doing is going to be kind of a middle of the page vanishing point / horizon line. And that's totally up to your personal discretion, which one you want to use. Do you want to have it in the middle or do you want to have it high? And then as well, it's going to be a digital submission where we are going to bring these images, we're going to scan them, bring them into Photoshop. We're going to isolate the line work and then add gray tones under the line work in Photoshop. And so then you get something like this, right, where we get both of our cars on one sheet as well as their reference photos, despite having drawn them on their own individual sheets. And so we'll print those out, and that will be our printed version of this page will be our critique. With that being said, I'm going to get into some key takeaways in a time lapse of how I went about constructing this vehicle and how I was thinking about it. Yeah, hopefully you'll learn something from that, and I will see you guys on the flip side. So when it comes to actually drawing this, anchor points are the tires. I recommend that the inking part can be a little more brain dead and, kind of go with the flow. But here, when we're establishing our base with the tires, making sure that everything lines up really nicely, right? That your tires, the bases are in line, that the cylinders that you're making are the same size, that the ellipses feel good, is going to be paramount here. It is really important this is kind of, you hear that phrase in art where it's 20% of the time is kind of 80% of the product. This is the 20% of the time that's important, is this sketching stage where we're setting up the perspective, right? The details and the flourish the things that people notice aren't actually going to be the things that matter. This is the part that matters. I'm really taking my time here I do a lot of editing for the proportions, really making sure that those tires feel good and that they're placed where I want them to be. And then I'm just establishing now this big base where I think I just edited it there, right? I thought it was too skinny vertically, and so I just made it a little bit taller. But this is where it matters, right? We're doing a big box for the entire body of the car, and then I'm doing a little box on top of that for the kind of cabin area, right, where your roof and your windshields and your windows are. And so I recommend every person starts their car looking like this. Proportions may differ though, right? Your car might be lower to the ground and longer. Mine was, pretty high. A Bronco is pretty high off the ground with a lot of space between the tires and the actual body of the vehicle. But I spent probably a good 20 minutes just establishing all of this information, right? The sketching stage is what matters the most. Inking, yeah, inking is very important, but that's just a skill that comes with time, right? This is the thoughtfulness part that is going to make or break your design. If you don't do this part right, then no matter how good your ink skill is, even if you're the best inker in the world, if you're working on top of a shitty base, it's gonna look like shitty work. That's just how the cookie crumbles. So a little technique interjection here that I recommend that most of us probably use. If we have a box here that we want to kind of turn into a pyramid, like this little thing on the right, there's a technique that's super easy and applicable here, where we just form an X on the top face, and then all you do is you pick the amount that you want it to come in, right? Like let's say I want it to come in, you can pick here, you can pick anywhere, but I'm gonna pick just right here. I want it to bevel in about that much. If you go from a red line, right, one line in your X to the other line in your X, and then you use that as a stopping point to go towards your vanishing point, use that as a stopping point where they intersect, go towards your vanishing point, boom, boom, boom. We have now beveled our object kind of equal distance, and so that gives us a top that each of these is kind of beveled the exact same amount proportionate to its actual proportions. And so if you go and you draw little corners here, right, you go from these corners to the bottom corners of your box, we can now erase, and that gives us a perfectly beveled symmetrical box, and it looks all pretty and nice. And a lot of car roofs kind of follow this design, and so I recommend putting this into play, right? If you have one face that's even beveled more than the other, for example, the windshield is normally more angled than another thing, you could do this whole technique because every face is going to be inlaid a little bit, but then on the face where the windshield is, you just come and shore that one up a little bit more, but still having it intersect with those kind of outside edges, and you get a nice, where everything else is symmetrically inlaid, but this windshield face is a more exaggerated angle. Interjection over. I'll move back to what we're doing. But I'm starting to sketch in, as you have on the screen, this Bronco design, those headlights, right? The things that I think are really pivotal and key to this design is that nice big bumper. Right now it's actually a little bit too skinny. I'll go back and edit it later to make it thicker at the top. But I'm just throwing in all of the key details I think that are important. There's those two lines, there's a bevel there as well as the headlights. And then this is me doing the drop shadow. This is an illustration, and so this is some of the kind of personal flourishes that you can add to it. I would look up maybe on Pinterest or Google different car illustrations that you like. I would really recommend doing that. Actually find like a couple images that you kind of want to take the style of or be inspired by. All of my favorite ones always have this cool drop shadow, and so I wanted to have the cool drop shadow, and so that's what I'm doing. But now I'm adding important features like the seam of the car door, those window shapes, making sure that everything feels like constantly looking back and forth between my reference to see that the proportions feel correct. This cap of the tire, it's jutting out, and so on the left, it's much thicker than it is on the right. And then now I'm just throwing in the details that make this design actually feel like a Bronco and what my car design is. And so I'll admit that tires are rough, but they matter so much. You'll see my end product has pretty detailed tires, and I recommend taking the time to do good, pretty detailed tires here. The big ellipse in the center, making sure that everything just feels 3D. And tires tend to actually be like kind of cone shaped in the interior, right, where the I'm not a car guy, but the metal parts of the tire push into the actual wheel and are concave. And so if you can show that by pushing in that center and really making that concavity clear, you're gonna be in a pretty good spot for selling things. But so now I'm just gonna move on to inking. And I'm just going to play this time lapse super quick. I'll probably skip around as well since you don't need to see a lot of this. But it could be good for people who are not 100% confident to see this. So if you're already on board with what we're doing here, go at her, start working. Or you can continue to watch this if you want to maybe see how I approach doing some of the inks and stuff, or maybe just look up once in a while and see information. But I'm going to let this play out. Good luck, and I wish you all the best with your car designs.